All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you all for showing up this morning to officially welcome back Kelly Kroskoff as President of Basketball Business Operations for the Indiana Fever.
No one anticipated this. The silent part was finally said aloud by the Indiana Fever president, who was situated at the top of the whole organization. Her remarks raised eyebrows and stirred up the whole basketball music community. For the first time, the reality of that franchise, music, politics, pressure, locker room dynamics, and the struggle between creating a champion and a brand were exposed. Everything you believe to be true about Caitlin Clark's circumstances in Indiana is altered once you learn the whole story. Let us now return to the start of this tale. Indiana was one of the least well-known teams in professional basketball prior to Caitlin Clark ever donning a Hoosier jersey. In 2021, there is speculation of 6 victories. 2022 saw 5 victories, while 2023 saw 13. They were a joke for over 10 years. No attention, no buzz, no admirers. There would not be any cameras. The chairs were not being filled. Whatever the Fever had been, the WNBA scene had drastically shifted. That was the truth. A once proud franchise turned into an afterthought. But despite their best efforts, nobody in that front office could have anticipated what transpired. When the first overall choice in the 2024 WNBA draft entered the room, everything changed. Caitlin Clark not only lowered the temperature but also altered the league as a whole. Everywhere she played, the crowds were completely packed. A media frenzy that, to be honest, had never been seen in women's basketball since music, record-breaking TV numbers, and jerseys flying off the racks. In the middle of that explosion, the organization had to make a choice. Would they attempt to change the direction of the wave or ride it? The Fever required someone at the top who understood precisely what they had, and that is where the whole tale starts to become interesting. A once-in-a-generation athlete who was revolutionizing women's sports on her own. Additionally, the front office made a choice that many people found shocking. They appointed Kelly Kroskoff as their new president of business operations and basketball. It made sense on paper. Kroskoff had previously created the Fever, been a member of the team that won the 2012 championship, and had first-hand knowledge of the group. The group presented her with all the expected fervor. However, something in her initial language at the press conference brought up difficulties that many at the time chose to ignore, but which would subsequently come back to destroy the whole company months later. The warning signals were in plain sight, but no one saw them until it was too late. At this time, everything fell apart. July of 2025. Caitlin Clark's injury-related absence is causing problems for the Fever. Due to a groin problem that has been plaguing her for weeks, Clark has only participated in 11 games this season. Fans are irritated. The club is on the verge of making it to the playoffs. There is increasing pressure. On the same day that the video from Kroskoff's first press conference inexplicably resurfaces on social media, the internet unearths a speech from October 2024 that most people had completely missed. "This is about the Indiana Fever," Kroskoff said while looking directly into the cameras at the news conference. "Yes, our core players are Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, and we want to continue developing them. But I want our team to be a long-lasting brand, like Apple, and a national leader. A firm like Apple, in 5 words. Since few individuals heard that vision in that cue, it was all that was required. In only a few hours, the video became viral, and its fanbase quickly expanded. It served as a caution. In the Fever front office, such a response was unheard of. Fans were not just angry but also well-organized, boisterous, and hard to ignore. Because of what Apple really accomplished, the comparison to Apple struck a different chord. One visionary, Steve Jobs, was the foundation of their whole identity, and when he left, the company all but fell apart. Clark supporters thus saw something in the previous president's choice of that precise comparison as revealing, as if they already considered Clark to be an aspect rather than the primary emphasis. A fan responded to enduring companies that align with their values on social media. Steve Jobs, the company's star and visionary, helped Apple become a worldwide symbol. Another fan did not hold back either. The Fever will acknowledge that they wasted the greatest chance in the history of women's sports. When Clark eventually decides she is tired of the skip fire in the front office, they said. The answers, comment sections, and message boards all expressed the same basic sentiment. You do not minimize the most significant player this team has ever had, and you keep focusing on her. There was more to the criticism than just noise. A few hours after the video went viral, Kroskoff's whole account, which had just been active on social media a few days prior, vanished. Someone in that organization made the choice, and they were aware of how dire things were becoming. There was quiet in place of a message or an explanation. The players on the court, the ones who really suited up next to Caitlin Clark every night, were telling a totally different and much more truthful tale while the front staff was being demonized online. This is where things become even more convoluted. When Lexi Hull, one of Clark's closest friends, submitted for a story in Glamour magazine, she had nothing. Although almost no one in a Fever uniform had previously been prepared to reveal, Hull said that everyone in the league already knew. Because of the media attention and the individuals who have supported us since Caitlin arrived, I believe there is some jealousy over the Fever. She went one step further and said that teams from all across the league have been publicly saying things like, "We cannot allow the Fever win," in their own locker rooms. Hull's remarks revealed a disturbing truth that has been developing for the last 2 seasons. These days, the Fever do more than simply play hoops. Every time they play, a single member of their squad has caused opposing teams to target them, rather than the overall performance of the squad. Sophie Cunningham went one step farther. The player who established herself as Clark's enforcer on the court and made it obvious early on that taking cheap shots at her teammate would have repercussions had already come out and verified what the whole league had been wondering about. Aaliyah Cunningham claimed to have heard it when she was still in Phoenix before moving to Indiana. She said that there were overt discussions about Clark in the locker room, indicating that rivals were not simply trying to win. They were attempting to make their point. The story of Clark being physically targeted and receiving an unending welcome to the W moment has been recorded throughout the season. Even objective onlookers were shocked by the intensity of the hard play aimed at Clark by the time her groin injury terminated her season after only 13 games, and many were seriously questioning whether the officials had adequately protected her. A growing percentage of people who were listening carefully said that the answer was no. However, the inside narrative of what it is truly like to be Caitlin Clark's colleague was beginning to emerge while all of this was happening in the public eye. Thus, it was just the start. It was likewise not what the reviewers had anticipated. Caitlin Clark's detractors have mostly promoted a straightforward story. That she caused issues in the bathroom. She was unpopular with the players. That the prominence and attention caused cracks that no team could endure. On a podcast in September 2024, Hall of Famer Cheryl Swoops said that important Fever players were subtly expressing their lack of excitement about going because the circumstances surrounding Clark were too much for them to handle. As the Fever started its second season together, it spread quickly. It blended in with the background noise or the music that was playing around. Unless, of course, Clark felt obliged to appear as a guest on another March Madness program that Subbard and Diana Taurasi were hosting. She faced it head-on. She was not upset. She did not act defensively. She handled it incredibly composedly. In essence, you become used to others believing they know what goes on behind closed doors when, in fact, they don't. Music. She continued to get encouragement from her co-workers in that locker area. During the 2025 playoffs, Clark's teammates flooded the court once she recovered from her injuries. They ended her interview after the game. They unexpectedly appeared for her. There was a huge celebration in the locker room when the Fever won the Commissioner Cup. The players' bonding, laughter, and genuine joy for one another did not read like an act. The media has not yet assembled this. Whether or if Caitlin Clark's colleagues loved her was never the main emphasis of the Fever narrative. It concerned whether the front office, which was in charge of them all, was prepared to surround her with the required parts and give the project their whole focus. Aaliyah's ties at the court level were genuine, which explains the disparity. Music. Clark and Boston were good friends. Lexi Hull was wary. Before they had ever played a game together, Sophie Cunningham and other new players were swooning over Clark. The rookie who made the final roster, Michaela Timpson, respected Clark in a way that is difficult to duplicate. Following the expansion draft, Clark sent a message to 2 of her teammates on Instagram, saying, "Cub, I love you, for Christy Wallace and my Aussie for life, for Chloe BBY." The love was sincere. These were genuine connections, but winning championships requires more than just contacts. And at the center of it all was that tension. In addition to the Apple Sound clip, Kelly Kroskoff's remarks at the October 2024 news conference included something that many people overlooked in their haste to express their disgust. Krokoff was discussing the long game when she said that she wanted the Fever to be an enduring brand. When Indiana won its lone championship in 2012, Caitlin Clark was 10 years old. She added that sometimes it takes a generation to go to the next level. Perhaps the gang had been working for someone else all along, sowing the seeds for a 10-year-old someplace who would find inspiration in what the Fever was doing at the moment. Depending on how you interpret the real goals of the front office, you may see it as either vision or deception. But there is no denying this. Beginning in 2024, a brand prevented fans from attending the Fever. They arrived as a result of a player. They spent hours at a time behind the wheel. They received monies that the WNBA had never seen before. The league had never anticipated the amount of spectators. Additionally, ticket sales decreased when Clark's injuries prevented him from playing in ways that could be quantified, recorded, and publicly recognized. TV viewing declined. It was impossible to deny the brutal truth of what Clark represented to that brand. However, the organization's top-level statement repeatedly mentioned the team, the institution, and the brand, as if the individual garnering all of that attention was somehow apart from it. Kroskoff made a particularly notable comment at the press conference. "You would want to play beside Caitlin Clark if you are a smart basketball player and you see how she plays," she said. And even she probably did not realize at the time how accurate that turned out to be. Players had to accept wage reductions in order to go to Indiana, as the Fever's recruitment prowess had subtly developed into one of the most compelling stories in the WNBA. The chance to play alongside Clark was the deciding factor for veterans. There were other locations where Clark's fan base existed outside crowded stadiums. Players wanted to be a part of something greater than a typical WNBA season because of the atmosphere it was fostering. In spite of this, the Fever has grown to be one of the league's most well-liked locations. Not because of a marketing plan, but rather because of a basketball player who packed buildings wherever she went and improved everyone around her. Now let us talk about 2026 and the Fever's next projects. In the WNBA expansion draft, the team lost 2 players. Christy Wallace to Toronto and Chloe BBY White to Portland. Clark herself had to put up with a season that was meant to be her breakout second year, but instead it was a nightmare of injuries that kept her to only 13 games in the regular season. She was chosen for the All-Star game despite averaging 16, 5 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds a game. Despite sitting on the sidelines in civilian clothing, she remained the league's focus of attention. Beneath it all, the Fever were constructing a $78 million performance complex that Kroskoff referred to as the foundation for the next generation. The music facility is intended to be the type of home base that draws top talent for many years to come, even if it will not open until 2027. The components are in place. The concern is whether those responsible for rendering decisions above the court are aware of their options and if they plan to act before it is too late. Beneath every argument over the Fever's headquarters, every issue with Clark's teammates, and every impassioned comment about conflict in the locker room, there is a larger truth that is really much simpler than all of it. In only 1 year, this team went from winning 5 games a season to becoming the most watched team in women's basketball. This is a revolution, not a rebuild. Furthermore, brand strategy boards do not lead to revolutions. They occur as a result of once-in-a-generation artists who provide everyone around them interest, music, competitiveness, and entertainment value. The Fever president's ambition to create a brand like to Apple caused a frenzy because fans saw the risk in it. The same risk that destroyed previous brands that attempted to replace their star with a logo. No one is more aware of the reality than the players in that locker room. They have seen it personally and played by it. Additionally, what they continually express in every social media post and interview while playing with Caitlin Clark is not just different, as seen by every poignant sideline discussion and post. This is a unique chance that does not present itself again. Ensuring that those in charge of the organization have similar ideas would be beneficial for the Fever. There is one thing for sure. As a result, the window is now open. The existence of the opportunity is not the issue. The issue is whether they have the courage to really surprise everyone. At last, the quiet section was spoken aloud by the Indiana Fever president, who was seated at the top of the whole organization. Her remarks raised more than simply eyebrows. It sparked the world of basketball. For the first time, the dynamics of the locker room, politics, pressure, music, and the struggle to create a champion and a brand all fell apart. Everything you believe to be true about Caitlin Clark's circumstances in Indiana is altered once you learn the whole story. Let us now return to the start of this tale. Indiana was one of the least well-known teams in professional basketball prior to Caitlin Clark ever donning a Hoosier jersey. 6 victories in 2021, 5 in 2022, and 13 in 2023 are being discussed. They were a joke for over 10 years. No attention, no buzz, and no admirers. There would not be any cameras. The chairs were not being filled. Despite the fever, the WNBA scene had radically transformed. That was the truth. A once proud franchise turned into an afterthought. But despite their best efforts, nobody in that front office could have anticipated what transpired. When the first overall choice in the 2024 WNBA draft entered the room, everything changed. Caitlin Clark not only lowered the temperature but also altered the league as a whole. Please subscribe, leave a comment, and enable all notifications to make sure you do not miss anything. We will see you in the following video after you click the one on the screen. Down.